Previously on Thanos Loves Yuna.
Can we do a Christmas special on one of my favorite comics? Welcome to Insanity. I promised I wouldn't snap the host, Jamie, into dust. But no one said anything about snapping him into his own dark, demented mind. Everyone, please welcome Karen Plankton.
Hello, collectors.
I know who you really are. Let me out of here, dude.
And now the conclusion.
Vic, if you don't bring Jamie back, I'll get Thanos to do it.
Yeah, maybe later.
Hi. What happened? Yeah, unfortunately, I don't remember a single thing. I don't know what to do about Vic. I guess it's time we had that talk with him. So you're Karen from SpongeBob SquarePants,
Yes.
and you say Doom hired you.
Yes.
Okay, and you're the new camera guy or girl?
I identify as a woman, but I don't have a body. The preferred term is body fluid.
Okay, I've never heard body fluid used in that way before. So are you like Doom's new girlfriend? Is he over Yuna now?
My personal life is none of your business.
Okay, then I guess we'll just start the new episode. Collectors! Welcome to Season 2 of the comics and video game collecting show, Thanos Loves Yuna, where the collections are real, but the staff, well, not so much. Isn't that right, Karen from SpongeBob SquarePants?
Yes.
Today's episode is all about marriage. Ah, yes, marriage. That formal unity between two entities that unites their love in economic security and encases them in archival plastic, never to be touched by human hands again. Speaking, of course, about taking the pages from one comic and marrying them to the pages of another comic, or in the case of video games, taking a loose cartridge and reuniting it again with the box and the manual that it originally came with, and then sending them off for grading. In the case of comics at least, the collecting community has decreed that marriages are unconstitutional. I decree that comic books shall never be allowed to marry. And I would tend to agree with this as well. But as with conventional marriages between humans, things can get pretty complicated pretty fast, and that is the case with video games. So today we're going to start with comic books because they're much more clear-cut, much more straightforward to explain. This is a CGC graded copy of Amazing Spider-Man #1. The purple label simply means that there has been some restoration done on this comic. I knew about the restoration when I sent it in for grading. I wanted to fix the spine and some other defects. I usually don't agree with restoration of any kind, but this comic and I have a long and sordid history, and this is a tale best left for another episode. When I got the comic back, the grader had correctly identified the spine restoration, but, to my surprise, they had also noted the cover had been married. So what do I mean when I use the term marriage in the context of comic books? So let's take, for example, a very valuable comic, Fantastic Four #1. Say you've got a copy of Fantastic Four #1. Now, at a 9.0, that Fantastic Four #1 is worth about $270,000, but your copy has a big, nasty, gross stain on the back cover. And that big, nasty, gross stain on the back cover is making it more of a 6.0. And at a 6.0, that comic is worth maybe about $30,000. But it just so happens that there is a comic that came out the same month and the same year called Gunsmoke Western #6, and it has the exact same back cover as Fantastic Four #1. You get that $300 or $400 9.0 version of Gunsmoke Western #6. You take the back cover off it, you marry it to your Fantastic Four, bam, you've got a 9.0 Fantastic Four #1. So now I know what you're thinking. You send that comic off for grading, and the grader will correctly identify the married page, and it'll be notated on the label. And there's some truth to that. But remember that those graders are just human, and they make mistakes. Take Amazing Spider-Man #1, for example, except in this case it was the exact opposite mistake, and they saw a married page where none existed. Now more on that shortly. And you might also be thinking that a married page would be easy to spot, and there's some truth to that as well. Comic books are manufactured and printed at the exact same time, so those pages are going to go through the same wear and tear over the life of that comic. And if you insert another page into that comic book, it's going to stand out. The color is going to be lighter or darker, there's going to be different staple holes, different wear around the edges. But if you're buying your comics online, or you're at a really busy comic show and you're just flipping through comics and you want to buy something right away, you're not going to take the time to look through every page really carefully, then you might end up getting ripped off. Well, now's as good a time as any to talk about Amazing Spider-Man. I mentioned earlier that this comic came back from CGC with an incorrect label saying that the cover had been married. I also mentioned earlier that I had done some restoration to it. I had the spine fixed. So thankfully I had before and after pictures of when but before the spine was fixed and after the spine was fixed, and that was evidence enough for CGC to remove the married label on there. I guess you could say I had it divorced. Unmarried divorce, whatever. So they actually re-slabbed it for me and put a new label in there, and they did that free of charge, but they did make me pay for shipping, which was kind of a kick in the butt. Bottom line is that married pages are looked at as cheating, and I would rather have a Fantastic Four #1 with a giant, nasty, messy stain on the back, one so horrendous it makes me flinch. But then that flinch triggers a buried memory of a bully that used to torment me in grade 2 by shooting spitballs at me with elastic bands. And I realize that 35 years later, I have never purchased an elastic band, not once. I don't have any in my house, and I go out of my way to find alternatives like pipe cleaners or Velcro strips. And it's all because the kids laughed. They laughed and pointed as the spitballs slimed down my face with the consistency of a slug with salt poured on its back. And I know, deep down, that I fill this void with meaningless collectibles, comics, games, comics. What's the point? Possessions are meaningless. Now, where things really start getting complicated is with video games, where the cartridge, the instruction manual, and the box aren't manufactured at the same time, and those three components don't necessarily have to have the same amount of wear and tear over the life of the game. Making things even worse are these things called imps, improperly married parts. There's some real gray areas here. Shoot, is that Doom getting back? We may have to postpone the rest of this episode. The way he stormed out earlier on, I think he's looking for a fight, and this ain't gonna be pretty.
Please be gentle on him.